तो जेएलएफ के 15वें संस्करण का आज चौथा दिन है। जेएलएफ में राजस्थान की भव्यता पर फोकस और स्मृति ईरानी इस दौरान क्या कुछ कह रही हैं, सुनते हैं।
Paramilitary forces are killed and there is a dreaded silence about it. The book emanated from my participation in a television debate where one of the panelists was very nonchalant about the death of 72 CRPF personnel and said, वर्दी पहनी है तो obviously इनको पता है कि इनकी मौत होगी. Why would you get so upset about it? And at that very moment when this panelist was speaking, I wondered, what if one family member of that officer was watching that debate? How ungrateful would we sound if we do not stop that conversation right there and said that if there is a man or a woman in uniform, they deserve as much respect as any other individual. So if you look at the book, you will see that the romanticization of the Naxal violence is shred to pieces in a fictional way. You will see that officers who have risen beyond the call of duty, who have withstood the tugs and the pulls and the pushes of the system, and yet being honest, they are celebrated. So for me, the book is a celebration of sacrifices of many an individual who will never be spoken of, but who believed in the Constitution, upheld the values of that Constitution, not take up arms against your own country. And I think that this is a book as a tribute to them. The anger that emanated a decade ago, I think I productively put to rest when I wrote the book.
So, it's interesting that you talked about how strongly you feel about the issue. It's very evident to anyone who will read the book that it's also been greatly researched. It's not simply based on some opinions you have formed. So there is a strong feeling that goes in. There is a lot of research that goes in. But what tends to happen with a lot of books like this, and that is what surprised me about the book, is that it just ends up being a fictionalized extrapolation of this is what I think, which is not what your book is. So everything you're saying right now is the book is not sort of, let me tell you what I think about the crisis and I've made some cardboard cutouts and they will just speak on my behalf. That's not what the book is. And it's not easy as a writer to feel something very strongly, to go out and research it, and then somehow put it in the background and let the story tell itself. Okay? So I'm very interested in that process of research, of knowing when to stop researching, when to let the characters breathe. I know writing process is not something easy to talk about, but whatever you can share would be valuable.
I think it is a challenge to transcribe data into emotion. It is a challenge to look at police evidence. It is difficult to look at investigations. And yet, knowing the truth, even keep parts of it away from your fiction. It is difficult to transform a very evocative journey where you have seen people blown to smithereens just for serving their country, and yet restrain yourself enough to say that this needs to withstand commercial scrutiny. For me, like I said, it was a journey of transforming my rage. It was a journey of finding a reflection of my own experiences and yet making it so story-worthy that any individual who's never known of the Naxal movement, any individual who's never delved into that research, does not feel strange when they pick up the threads of the story. As you have been kind enough to say, that you enjoyed it as a thriller. And my endeavor from day one was, and I've had the opportunity, blessedly, of writing for television. So I wanted to ensure that whoever picks up the book does not put it down till the story is completely told.
So, it's interesting that you started this conversation by saying that, and even Sanjoy mentioned that he was skeptical when he received the book.
Sanjoy is devastated that the book was good.
Yes, of course. I'm sure he was devastated. I was partly devastated that it was good. But my followers on Twitter, my followers on Twitter are extremely
liked the book.
My followers on Twitter are extremely devastated that I liked the book.
And I made the mistake of telling Sanjoy, I thought everybody was liberal. And he just looked at me and said, which world are you living in? But I think the fact that the book can evoke such a productive emotion as just a book from people like Sanjoy or you for that matter. By now you have read through so many manuscripts that I'm sure that you pick up many with a sense of disdain, many with a sense of boredom. The fact that you were kind enough to pick up the book, the fact that the book fascinated you enough to give your time to it. And when you finished the story, you had a modicum of satisfaction. Oh, this is time well spent. I think that is what, for me, is the greatest joy as an author.
That's always the greatest joy for a writer. But you know, I mean, at least personally, for me as a writer, I don't care if 4 people read what I write. But I want them to read it with an open mind. I mean, that's the only thing I expect. And I was wondering, now that the book is out, what kind of reactions have you got beyond Sanjoy and me? Some things that might have delighted you, some things that might have surprised you, some things that might have disappointed you. I'm very curious to know.
The consistent reaction has been that we could not put it down till we finished the story. There was one I think as a part of the strategy for putting the book out there and talking about it, in the national capital I had a very celebrated gentleman look at me and said,